Good evening, everyone. I knew that when Glitch's latest series dropped that I'd need to give my thoughts on it, as I definitely feel a wide generational gap forming between the kind of entertainment that I enjoy and the kind of entertainment that the younger adults enjoy. The Gaslight District is a stop-motion-esque CG series about a crime family of sorts trying to make an unliving in the underworld operating out of a butcher shop front. As the intro's extremely video gamey narration explains, this is a world of zombie-like people called Rattlings, with one exception: the crime family's young upstart Melancholy, a secret human living among the eternal. There's this prophecy that claims a human will bring an end to this world, so keeping her identity a secret is of utmost importance, as her blood is black rather than the colorful purple of the Rattlings, so she has to be very careful not to get injured or even sustain an anime-style nosebleed, or the rest of the city will catch on. Okay, so first of all, I have to give credit where credit is due here on this series. The level of craftsmanship on display is top-notch. I think the closest analog that I can come up with for the Gaslight District is the 2004 bombastic production IG thriller Dead Leaves. Just this balls-to-the-wall, relentless onslaught of creative visual effects, dynamic camera work, and copious destruction. The animation timing is great, fluid when it needs to be, choppy when it's funnier, and the art and set direction are absolutely immaculate. But also like Dead Leaves, the pilot is what I'd consider a massive amount of style and a simply adequate amount of substance. Obviously, millions of people like this show and the amazing digital circus, while I've sort of been feeling left out. And that's fine, nobody has to like everything, obviously, but, you know, I'm 40, and chances are the majority of Glitch's audience is older teenagers, and that probably also extends to Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. So I've been trying to figure out what it is about these shows that makes me an old, grumpy dinosaur, and now I'm making it your problem, I guess. Sorry in advance. The pacing in Gaslight District is almost too absurd at times. As the second part 1 begins, it's just this crazy amount of action while characters are yelling and firing off pistols, and it's already kind of overwhelming for me. I'm able to loosely piece together that this is a sort of family unit criming together, but they also all seem to hate each other's guts, kinda, and then Ken keeps having these lightning moments where he gets super pissed or super excited or something. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I know that people who are quote-unquote killed aren't actually dead and they can come back, which is why the only way to really silence people in this world is to give them cement shoes or to cement them entirely, as is shown as a punishment later on. But this effect seems different with Ken, and it's also happening when he's not hurt. So is this just like a fancy way of illustrating that he gets mad sometimes, or is there like a mechanic behind it? There's a lot of little things like that throughout the episode where I just feel a step behind. Like, why does Bread Head have a bread head? I mean, merchandising, obviously, but, like, there's nobody else like that in this world, so what gives? And he can also snort yeast to become super powerful like Popeye? I mean, that's a silly gag, but just like, huh? There's this bit later on during the grand heist of the episode where Mud runs into someone he used to know and then just brutally kills him, and it's like, am I gonna be let in on any of this at some point? That moment in particular doesn't seem like it'll be elaborated on later, so it's just, I don't know, not very effective in whatever they were trying to do there, whether it was a simple joke concept or like a payoff to something we didn't see. But that kind of pacing persists throughout the entire first half and barely lets up in the second. And it's not the only Glitch production to do this. It's also not the only show for this demographic that does it. And I'm not going to claim that I've cracked the code or anything, but I do wonder if the reason why the pacing and frenetic editing is like this is because the audience has grown up with Vine and Snapchat stories and Instagram Reels and TikTok, where a lot of storytelling gets hypercut without leaving any room to breathe. And so they're just used to this kind of pacing and it doesn't bother them. I imagine already that I'll have comments saying, "What are you talking about? It was easy to follow along." Look, I just don't use those services. I barely use social media at all these days. But to me, the Gaslight District feels like an hour-long film that was crunched down into 26 minutes. And the shame of it is that you lose the ability to flesh out those additional details, to form a connective bond between the characters, and bond the characters to the audience. Characters Characters like Melancholy, I've seen them for a couple of decades now, often on Tumblr blogs. They're manic, they're violent, they're quirky, but they also want you to believe they have pain and insecurities, and deep down they want to be loved. But without enough time to establish Melancholy as a person, her weaker moments feel more like someone pulling levers behind the machine. And maybe another part of my issue with this pilot is that it doesn't really feel like a pilot so much as the first half of a film. The main story revolves around this grand heist to steal an angel egg and pass it off as human. The point of this heist is that if they make a big demonstration and shatter what they claim is a human egg, then the city will assume that the prophecy has been thwarted and no one will think to suspect Mel anymore. And it's this big, elaborate mission that involves infiltrating another gang's turf, as well as sneaking into heaven itself. Or a type of heaven anyway. It's largely populated by birds, so bird heaven, I guess. In my opinion, this heist has the stakes and drama of a sort of final plot. If not a film plot, then a season finale, not the start of a story. I guess the main urgency driving this is that Ken has to keep icing witnesses that see Mel bleed, and he's running out of employees. But he also doesn't really want to do the plan in the first place. Mel has to push him into it. And I find it a little weird that we've started here. From a story outline perspective, I can sort of see it if this were one contiguous movie, but as an opening episode, it feels like too many steps were skipped. For example, Mudd remarks that the chase at the beginning was Mel's first job, and that she should work for him instead. So we're immediately going from very first job to the biggest job of her life? That's kind of wild. And what do you mean work for him? And actually, what do you mean by job? Because I know that Mudd doesn't know Mel's human, but the whole point of that chase was just to knock off a former member of the crime family who was gonna spill the beans on Mel. They didn't knock over a bank or put the squeeze on local businesses or other crimey stuff. They only seemed sort of tangentially adjacent to crime. And all of their work seems to revolve around Mel's humanity. And actually, that chase between the family and Jack at the beginning could have been the climax of a first episode instead of the opening. Maybe they're doing a normal job and then Jack sees Mel bleeding, and then Ken has to figure out a way to divert into hunting Jack down as a part of the job. The show is in such a hurry to set up the world and the prophecy and Mel's internal dilemma and yearning for validation that it ends up not really setting them up. It's less dominoes being placed to be knocked over, and more someone just chucking dominoes from a pile. There are also times where the show's devotion to being as energetic as possible actually gets in the way of telling the story or even conveying a joke, like this scene in which a Virtue Corps officer is checking Mudd's truck for stowaways. Right before he can investigate the floorboards, you know, those famous truck floorboards that trucks have, someone pops in and says, "All clear," and this, I guess, annoys the officer and he kills the soldier. But the cinematography is so cramped and high speed that it's hard to parse what's happening. Even the part where the soldiers roll together to form a flight of stairs for the officer, it's over-amplified with all these crazy dynamic angles. And all throughout the pilot, everything's just constantly cranked up to 11. But since the baseline itself is like a 10, there's no point of grounding from which any craziness stands out. And then the final scene being a cliffhanger, it really left the impression on me that there's only one other half to this, because unless they leave the island and it becomes a sort of world travel adventure show, I'm not sure where they'd go beyond resolving their current dilemma. Where the episode stops feels like the end of the second act of a 3-act story. But I also understand why they planned it this way. Having such a big heist allows for fun new environments and different unique threats, and more opportunities for set piece and spectacle. And I guess ultimately that's what the audience wants, so if that was the intent, they definitely achieved it phenomenally. I just want more meat on the bone. It's kind of like if Gordon Ramsay cooked you a meal and gave it this super pleasing plating, but the meal itself is a TV dinner. It'll keep you going, but it won't give you that full nourishment. I'm of the belief that you can have style and substance. I know it always seems like one innately sacrifices the other, but even just stretching this out another 10 to 15 minutes would have allowed for more character development, world development, stake establishing, just the kind of stuff that I really think you need to get people invested. But I guess really it's just getting people like me invested, right? Because the series already has 4 million views in one day, so I'm probably just shouting against the wind here. But I actually have a pretty good example to give here, also in the world of anime. Kyoso Giga was a 2011 anime original developed for the internet, and if you've ever seen that pilot, you'd immediately see the parallels here. A ton of stuff smushed together without any downtime, without any opportunity for the viewer to process what happened. Same length as Gaslight District 2, and all the reviews at the time were like, what even the hell is going on? This is a lot of very beautiful noise, but I don't understand a thing. So what did they do? They started over with a full-length 10-episode TV series, and that series is critically acclaimed. Maybe I'll do a video on it at some point, actually. As for this, well, I'm still interested in seeing where the story goes, but I don't think it's gonna have the kind of staying power of something like Nightmare Before Christmas. I kind of view it as like a silly little roller coaster ride. You get on it, you have some fun, and then as soon as you get off it, you forget everything. But what do you think? Did you give it a gander? Is the Gaslight District fine as a turn-your-brain-off thrill ride? Were you bothered by the pacing like I was, or did you find it perfectly fine? Let me know, respectfully, in the comments. We're all chill here, no nastiness, alright? And a special thanks to my indie darlings on Patreon, like Rob Ska, Tyler McBride, Nick Shalark, Tony Domenico, and Game Trekker. This was another quick loosey-goosey video. Once I saw that pilot, I knew I had to react to it, but I'll have another longer video out on the 29th where I talk about the spring anime season and the shows that I watched, including the new Gundam and Witch Watch. Until then, you'll find me in another castle. Later!